before she left us.
We weren't waiting for you. They're gonna, but you will go
Sit
early.
down and have a beer.
You're gonna go.
with her and
You're gonna go at the
be
beginning, right after minutes.
talking. The lawyer that lived next door.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Giving him
Hi, everyone.
hard
Thank you for joining us for the May 2023 Conservation Commission meeting. First on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Anyone have any comments?
Looking to Allison.
Oh, there were a couple of things, and one I'm not sure about, just because I think Brian did say 10 conditions, but we actually only have 6. And so I didn't know whether we wanted to change that or not.
What is this one for, Allison? Which, permit?
This is, I'm trying to find the page, I was just on it. Let's see. Okay, it was on page, there's no page numbers, 7. It's on page 7.
Yeah, page
And it says, Mr. Gibb mentioned, when looking at the 6 conditions from Article 10, he felt that it could only satisfy 2 of the 10 conditions instead of 2 of
Oh,
the 6
yeah, I
conditions.
mixed the article number when in the
Oh,
last
oh,
part.
okay.
That's fine to correct.
Okay. And then the other thing was just that Great Bay, I think, should be capitalized. It's just small letters in the minutes, and that's on page 12. Great Bog should be capitalized, I think. Okay.
Anything else? Wants to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the April meeting, Conservation Commission meeting.
I'll second.
Second. Discussion? Good to go? So no one's on Zoom, right? We have
Not
it.
from the commission. Nope.
So all in favor?
Aye.
That- Against?
I don't think there's any opposed. No. There's
All right,
not.
we're good. Next, we are going to add one thing to the agenda before we go into the new business conditional use permit applications. Susan Morrill, city attorney, is here to give us a little rundown on recusals.
Thank you. So I think that the important concept to remember is that your applicants are coming before you and they want to be treated fairly, and they want to leave feeling like they were treated fairly, like any litigant who comes into a courtroom. They want the judge to be impartial, to not have made up their mind or prejudged their case, not have any interest in the outcome of the case, and to really feel like they got a fair hearing, that the law was applied fairly and appropriately. So the guidance there throughout the city ordinances, we have an ethics ordinance, various boards and commissions have their own rules, but I believe that anytime recusals or ethics are mentioned, we really go back to the same definition. And that is that you should recuse yourself and not participate in a decision if you have a direct personal or pecuniary interest in the outcome that differs from the ordinary citizen. So this has been described as the test, is this going to put money in your pocket? Do you have a pecuniary interest in this, in the outcome? Or do you have a personal interest in the outcome? That's the first part of the recusal standard, ethical standards that we have. And the second part is what's called the juror standard. So if you were called to sit as a juror in a court case, you would be instructed with a number of cautions by the judge before they would determine whether you qualify as a juror or not. And those essentially go, again, to the heart of whether you can be fair, and impartial. So you would be asked a number of questions that, whether you know anything about the case, whether you've heard anything about the case outside of the courtroom, outside of this proceeding, whether you know any of the parties or any of the attorneys representing the parties, if you feel that you're biased because of that knowledge, if you think that you may gain from the outcome of the case in any way, either personally or financially, whether you believe just based upon who you are and your beliefs, if you can be impartial, or if there are some beliefs or characteristics that make you think I can't be fair in this case. I have some very strong opinions, and I can't follow the law or apply the rules fairly and impartially. And the other part of the standard that we advise is if you have any concerns about whether or not you should recuse yourself, the best course of action is to do so, because then you alleviate any appearance, which you've probably heard the phrase, the appearance of impropriety. Again, that's designed to make the people who come before you feel like they have been treated fairly and impartially. Also, in the extreme event that someone does not recuse themselves when they should, it can become an issue in litigation going forward for, at least for our planning board and zoning board, etc. So these are important matters to the people that come before you. They want to be heard. They want to be treated fairly. And so if you have any concerns about whether you can do that, you should recuse yourself. Only you know. It's a personal decision. Only you know whether you have any of those biases. So that is sort of the framework that I would encourage you to work from, is to just ask yourself whether you have any personal pecuniary interest and whether you can be fair and impartial. If there's anything that prevents you from being fair or impartial, then you should recuse yourself. So I'm happy to take any questions you have about that. It's, it's easy to give the guidelines, but then, it's all the, in the law, it's all the facts that change the outcome of the question, but I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you have.
My question is kind of logistical wise. When in the process of an application coming before us, would you recuse yourself? Is it before they even start presenting? Is it, can the person thinking of recusing or not ask questions and then recuse before the vote, or?
If you know that you are likely to recuse yourself, or you feel like you should, that there's some bias, it should be done before there's a hearing, before any information is presented, so that you're not participating, you're not influencing the other board members, commission members, in the process itself by your questioning, by, anything anyone could pick up on that may show a bias, and maybe the other members of your board are influenced by you and your opinions, and they're going to pick up on that bias. So really should recuse yourself at the outset before any information is presented to the board or any deliberations. And that would include the presentation. The deliberations include the presentation.
I have something similar just along the logistical side. I've seen various committee or board members recuse themselves and step away and join the public, and then I've seen where they've just recused themselves and continued to stay where they are. Is there sort of a city guideline about a preference to one or the other, or an expectation, or?
I don't think that there's any set rule,
Okay.
you know, about whether you should stay in your seat or not. I think for the most part, people do stay in their seat. I think the question would come up if you go to sit with the public and then you want to be a member of the public and you're presenting to the board on the issue that they're deciding that you've recused yourself from. That would be, you know, you'd be, again, bringing your bias to the decision makers and affecting the outcome, and it would not be seen, certainly by the applicant, as being fair or impartial, whether they're, you know, opposing the application or presenting the application, depending upon whatever view was taken. So I think just sitting quietly is fine, just excusing yourself to go sit and read something somewhere else is fine, but not to then participate
Yeah,
in
I wasn't
that, in
suggesting
that matter.
participation, just
Right.
whether we continue to be present here or not.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question, Barbara?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, the juror standard is not something that applies to us. That's sort of a question, but.
So it's more applicable to, say, the planning board, who's making a final decision about property rights. But across the board, we use that standard for the test, you know, in terms of how to articulate whether you should recuse yourself or not. How do you figure out if you have a bias? Well, oftentimes it's because you know something about the matter and you've already made a decision, or you have some feelings about it, and you're not going to keep an open mind during the hearing. So that's part of the juror standard. Can you keep an open mind? Can you listen to the evidence? Can you make a decision based upon the evidence? Do you know the people who are presenting or their attorneys? Do you have a bias in regards to those people? Of course, you know, Portsmouth is a small town, so you're probably going to know people. That alone does not disqualify you. If that were true, nothing would get done. So it really goes to whether you have, you know, that knowledge, like, this is my best friend and I can't let them down, that type of bias. I can't be fair, and I can't be impartial, and I can't keep an open mind and listen to the evidence or apply the rules, whether your commission rules or planning board rules, zoning board rules, can't apply the law fairly. So you're not sitting as jurors the way the planning board or the zoning board does. And my understanding is you're at an advisory board, right? So you're not making a final decision. So it's not strictly a juror standard, but you can use that analogy to help you, guide you through making your decision.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Susan. That was
You're
really
welcome.
helpful.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thanks. All right, next on the agenda is the conditional use permit application for Eversource utility structure replacement.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeremy Degler. I'm an environmental scientist with Ty and Bond, representing Eversource. We do have representatives from Eversource here as well to answer any questions you may have. This is in regards to the conditional use permit application for the Eversource E194 and E181 structure replacement project. This is going to be the replacement of 42 utility structures within Portsmouth, taking down the old wooden structures and replacing them with steel. Along with that, there's also going to be 8 structures that are having, I believe, wire work done. Yes, that's 8 structures having static wire work done as well. Some of these structures are located within wetlands, some are located within buffers. We do have some stream impacts. Total numbers for you regarding the impact numbers. For wetlands, we're going to look at about 208,734 square feet of temporary impacts, and this is all from timber matting for access to the structures, as well as a 100 by 100-foot work pad around the structures to take down and then drill the new holes for the caissons. Any spoils being generated as part of that drilling will be taken at least 100 feet away from any wetland areas, deposited in an upland area, and then just completely rehabilitated. There's going to be seeding and another word I'm looking for, sorry, stabilization, sorry. So for this, we do have access. We have work pad construction. Construction is going to start in September until about December. There will be another visit in the spring just to check on all of the stabilization and reseeding efforts as well. Outside of the wetlands, we do have approximately 3,310 square feet of impacts to an intermittent tributary to Pickering Brook. That's just going to be from the access and pad development as well. And then within the 100-foot buffer zone, we're going to have about 78,642 square feet. And that's going to be within upland areas, but within the buffer zone. And again, once construction is completed, all of the timber matting is removed. The entire area is restored to existing conditions. There will be some gravel left for like work pad areas in these upland areas. That'll be covered with loam, reseeded, and stabilized as well. There will be an alteration of terrain permit and a statutory permit by notification that will be filed with the state after the CUP. And I believe that's kind of a basic rundown of the project. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Yeah, Allison.
I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. So one of them is on page 34 of our packet. I'm not sure if there's a special number that you guys have. It's 833049, I think, up in the right-hand corner.
It's map sheet 5 of 11. Down at the bottom right, is that which one you're looking at?
See that on here, maybe? Yeah, that's the right one. Anyway, so it starts on this page, and the thing is that there are parallel sort of hot pink lines on it, and I couldn't find a definition as to what those are. I was thinking that it might be wetland protection area, but I can see that
It's wellhead protection area.
wellhead protection area.
Wellhead.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Then another one was that someone was going to find out how many raptor nests were on the poles that you were.
Yes, they looked into that. There are none as of now. However, for future reference, if something like that does occur, what happens is basically a drone gets sent up to check if there's any eggs in the nest, at which case it's kind of left alone. If there are no eggs, that nest would get relocated to like an adjacent structure that's not being replaced. And this is all done in coordination with the state and with the Migratory Bird Treaty Act as well.
Okay. And then I just have two comments about the wetland assessment. So one is that you've characterized a lot of these areas as unlikely to provide good wildlife habitat, but I have a friend that actually lives on the Echo Road section, and she has detailed for me the types of wildlife, which is pretty astounding, that use that wetland. And then the other thing is that with climate change, we look for any green space to provide cooling, and it certainly does that. And so I think that should be referenced as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Yes.
I have two questions. My first is, what is the life expectancy of the new steel structures?
That'd be an excellent question for someone from Eversource.
Hi, I'm Ashley Frenna with Eversource Licensing and Permitting. The average life expectancy for the new steel structures is about 50 to 70 years.
Do you know what it was for the wooden ones?
It's hard to say. Obviously, the weather is not as resistant for environmental factors. We've been seeing a lot of deterioration from woodpecker, termite damage, internal rot that's happened over the years. So I'm not sure
Okay.
what the difference is, but I can tell you that the steel is more resilient, and that's why the company has made the shift, moving away from replacing wood with wood and switching it out for weathering steel.
Thank you. My other question, so I have map sheet 2 of 11, which is page 31. So this is probably very easily explained, but you have the small yellow hash areas that are going between the pads. And is that to get to each pad?
Correct.
So for like pad number 14, let's say, or I guess that's 14, that's not hashed yellow, but is just purple outlined there. Like, does there need to be a path to get to the next one to the left a bit, the 13, if there's already a path coming from the other direction?
So ideally, in this scenario, we will be granted off right-of-way access from that no-name road
Yep.
to get to structure 14, rather than coming directly off of that state route there. It's very busy.
Okay.
So basically, we're permitting for some worst-case scenarios out here.
Okay.
And with that, we permit for in right-of-way access to all of our assets. So
Okay.
if one entry point is denied, then we're able to get in there another way.
Okay, that makes sense, because that happened, it looks like for a couple of them, and I was
Yeah.
a little confused.
And since we have this page pulled up, I
Yeah.
was unable to attend the site visit that happened last week, but I know there was some concern about the rain garden in proximity to this area, which is right adjacent to that no-name road area. So we will be avoiding that. Our access is,
Touch me.
not crossing over that area, but we will flag out and make the area known just so it's avoided by the contractor, whether it's some construction fencing, silt fencing, stakes with some flagging around it. We'll just make sure that it's visible to the contractor. That way they're not by any means going over near that area.
And then where you're saying that you are like permitted for several different access points, you probably have the one that is least impactful, and that would be your primary choice versus, so if that one gets denied, then you go to the next one, but your goal is to do the least impactful access. Okay.
Yep, avoidance and minimization. We certainly want to take the path of least resistance rather than coming in off of that busy road.
Okay. Yeah, Barbara.
I have why that one's still up is your access point was steep there, and when we went to the site visit, it was indicated that there would be some fill or grading done on that. And at the bottom, it was right at the bottom of where it was steep, it was wet.
Yeah.
So, and along with that, which was mentioned earlier, that there may be some access points where you're going to have to leave behind whatever you use for grading or fill. And I know I mentioned at the site visit, if there's a possibility to know which ones of those access points would not be fully restored back to
Right.
what they used to have. And then also how we would deal with that wetland being at the bottom without putting fill in that wetland.
So first things first, we would need to get landowner approval because that no-name road, the city of Portsmouth did just confirm that that is a private road. Once we get approval from the landowner, we would conduct our field study and ensure that we're not going to be putting fill in a wetland. If it's wetland, we would place a timber mat and then grade in the upland area where it is steep. As far as restoration, there's no benefit here to leaving in a road that is going to allow us to get in there in the future just because our upland access is limited. So we would restore the grade as best as we could to pre-existing conditions. In the majority of upland areas where we have a gravel pad or gravel access road, what we do is we take the material that's used to grade out that road and make a flat base area that's safe for work. Take that stockpiled loam at the end once the gravel is placed, put that back on top, add seed, loam, and some straw to stabilize that. So what you're left with is an area that in the future we can use if needed to get a bucket truck in there. But the natural vegetation will regrow, so you're not left with, an area that looks visually much different from the adjacent land that hasn't been disturbed. So work pads, anytime you see an upland work pad, we're showing in that purple is a 100 by 100 work pad area that would be graded out. Again, that loam would be stockpiled off to the side. They would place gravel for a hard work surface. Once construction's done, they would take back the gravel to a 30 by 60 area. And again, that's just for us to be able to get a bucket truck in there in the future. That loam would be spread along the top. Basically, they'll scour the top of it, so that way it's allowing for the fill to get in and penetrate the rest of the soil, and it'll allow other vegetation to regrow.
Thanks. I had one follow-up to that. Go ahead. Yeah. Just with the invasive species, if you're taking the loam and stockpiling it somewhere and then bringing it back again, so how do you control the invasive species from being spread around?
So we wouldn't be moving spoils or topsoil from one location out to another area of the right-of-way. We wouldn't be trucking dump trucks of soil from one section to another. So as far as invasives, I mean, I'm not personally familiar of if there are any in this area, but if the soil that is in the area is going to be what's used to restore that area, we wouldn't be trucking soil from structure 14 down to structure 40 to use that to restore that area. So as far as invasives, we do take that into consideration when we are removing mats. The contractors are sweeping those mats before removing them from those areas and bringing them to another location.
Yeah, I just hope, if there's some sort of note for contractors, because there's a ton of Phragmites out there, and I'm sure there's a lot of other things, is that if there's one area with Phragmites and one area that's not, that it's, even if it's on the same piece of property.
Yeah, and I know the wetlands too, if you're saying, I don't know if you have purple loosestrife out there or any of that, but I definitely hear the concern. So that's the BMP is making sure that we sweep those mats before we bring them to another spot. That way we're not having any unwanted seeds latching on and going to another area of the right of way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ready for a motion?
Can I just make sure nobody's here to ask any questions? Nope. Oh, wait, who's the attendee? Oh, there is an attendee. They don't have their hand raised.
Okay.
One question.
Yeah.
It's just like a small methods question, but it looked like there was a comment about taking the drilled material and dumping it somewhere in the upland nearby. Can you use some of that to backfill into the hole?
Yes.
Yeah,
but
okay, so
with
as much
the
as you
pole
can,
still-
you
yeah,
use right there.
It'll just be the leftovers that
Okay.
gets left in upland areas.
Okay, you don't have to
Right,
use
yeah.
new material.
Yep, yeah, the same material will be used to backfill.
That's good. Maybe one other question. What season do you work in? Do you lay out all these mats and?
This will be happening in September timeframe where we're going to start the civil access, so all of the matting placement, graveling, grading, and all of that activity. And we'll be continuing the structure replacement work and the wire work, wrapping up in the tail end of the year, December timeframe, and having mats pulled at the end of the year, so end of December, January. So we will make sure in the springtime to do checkups for monitoring and stabilization, as Jeremy had mentioned earlier.
That's great. It seems like the more you can do the work in the winter, the better for wildlife, right?
Yeah.
When the soil is hard and there's no nesting ground birds and that
Yeah,
kind of
with
thing.
all of the wetlands and the Great Bog area, it's
Yeah.
definitely ideal to do it in the fall season, fall, winter.
Do you have procedures for nests for birds?
For the osprey?
Yeah, or
Yeah.
even just like ground nesting birds.
I wouldn't say that I've encountered it all too much.
I had if they typically I have seen some where they'll just slight change to avoid it. But
Yeah.
typically, we do enough site visits before to identify anything like that, and would have that by now, hopefully, so.
Yeah, and this right-of-way is it's flat, that's why there's a lot of wetlands, so it should be relatively easy to shift our access around any nests. I know the primary concern typically is around the fledgling season, so
Right,
we're gonna be
earlier.
outside of that, working
Yeah.
in the October, winter timeframe. But yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, you want a motion? Sure. I can recommend approval for the utility structure replacement for the conditional use permit. I don't have any
second that.
stipulations.
No, it's too soon.
Okay.
Just whoever.
Discussion?
I did want to say that there is, to follow up on Allison's comment on the wildlife habitat, I did keep reading, it's not great wildlife habitat over and over again for these sites. And I mean, the reason primarily is because they have been disturbed over and over again. And so just to pass it up to the higher ups or whatever, that, any kind of restoration out there and the kind of things that other commissioners were asking about, you guys, there's been so many improvements on the best management practices that you use. And so, now seems like a good time to start thinking about those kind of things too. So, and, partnering for granting and with conservation commissions for that would be awesome.
Noted, thank you.
So,
Ready for a vote? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the standard dredge and fill permit for 105 Bartlett Street.
I'm going to recuse myself,
Okay.
but I'm going to just sit here if that's okay.
That
Then
is
I can
allowed,
hear face
apparently.
back. So thank you for your question.
Did you find it? It's in the package. Oh, so we use that PDF. Got it. If I can get the thing. Oh, that would help if I put it in the right place.
While Peter's getting that set up, I'll do introductions. Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Crimmins. I'm with Ty and Bond. We were the civil engineers and wetland scientists for this project at 105 Bartlett Street. Also here with me is from Woodburn and Associates is Vicky Martell, landscape architect. So we're here before you folks for our state dredge and fill permit application at 105 Bartlett Street. A number of you sitting on this board are very familiar with this project, given the history of it. But just, I know there are several new board members, so I'm happy to go through and do a presentation. But just a little history on this. This project had previously gone through the local approval process. It was a lengthy one. It was almost 2 years long. And having met previously with this commission actually 5 times. One was a work session, 3 regular meetings, and a site walk. So this board put a lot of work into the local application. We appreciate all the effort they did with the project team to make it the best possible project. That was approved for, or you folks had recommended a approval for a conditional use permit to the planning board back in February of 2021 with a 5-to-1 positive vote, with 2 of the stipulations being that the bike and pedestrian path, which I'll show through my presentation, be porous pavement and include operation and maintenance plan, which includes no salting or sanding, and that the site use only dark sky friendly lighting, which we agreed to. Ultimately, for the conditional use permit and the site plan approval, the planning board did vote to approve that in April of 2021. So we are here now, several years later, moving forward with the dredge and fill application. And what I'm about to present to you folks, I should state, is unchanged from the application that you folks had previously seen, with the exception of that we'll present the what we're including as far as impacts and mitigation proposal before the state judge and Phil. It's still the same 100-foot buffer that we reviewed in detail 2 years ago. Still all the same improvements. So I will highlight those through the presentation, but I did just want to state that. The project itself is going to include a net reduction in impervious surface within that 100-foot tidal buffer, approximately 28,000 square feet. It's a fairly significant reduction in impervious surface within the 100-foot buffer. And in addition, as you'll see as I go through my presentation, we're going to be removing all the buildings that are currently within the 50-foot buffer. The project's going to bring public open space where none exists. There's going to be approximately 71,000 square feet of public open space along the waterfront. 47,000 of that will be deeded to the city as Greenway community space, and another 24,000 of that immediately adjacent to the Greenway community space will be a public park in the rear of Building B. The project also has other significant improvements with buffer enhancement and stormwater quality improvement where none currently exists. For any of you that have been on that site, you'll see that for the most part, pavement just sheet flows right into the water or goes into catch basins that provide zero treatment. So with that, I'll go into presentation of the project. What we have here, there we go. All right, so this is the site, 105 Bartlett Street. It's bound to the north by the North Mill Pond, to the west by Bartlett Street, to the south by a railroad track, and over here to the east is the Granite State Minerals parcel with the salt pile. Next slide, please. Can I go ahead and do that myself?
Nope, I got it.
Got it.
Yep.
So just kind of zooming in, there is obviously that existing commercial piece where Ricci Lumber resides. The buildings itself will remain unchanged. There will be improvements on that, specifically stormwater improvements and the additional landscaping, pulling the pavement back. But the focus of the redevelopment area itself is largely this area of the parcel where we're going to be proposing 3 multifamily buildings, 152 units. And you can see the footprints laid out on top of that existing condition here. Within this site area, you can see the existing industrial building that currently houses Great Rhythm Brewery, a favorite of mine, a roundhouse and turntable that have been there historically from the prior railroad use, similarly a maintenance shop, existing impervious surface that comes right up to the edge of the water. The site's highly disturbed for anybody that has walked it even recently. There's lots of trash out there, there's homeless encampment, there's crime. The intent of this project is to clean all of that up. Next slide, please.
All right.
No worries. I wonder if it's the size of the PDF now that I added those aerials to
It
it.
might be the size of the PDF. I hope it doesn't do like 3. There we go.
There we go. All right, so starting at the entrance into 105 Bartlett Street, the Ricci window and door store, and then heading over to the Ricci lumber store. You can see here we are going to be doing some repaving, landscape enhancement, pedestrian improvements. For any of those that have walked down there recently, you'll see it's just kind of a wide swath of pavement. We're going to be adding curbing to collect stormwater. We're going to be pulling the impervious surface to the extent that we can. Obviously, we're pinched with constraints from the existing buildings, but pulling it further away from the water to provide adequate travelways, parking, and to support the buildings. Next slide, please. So here's the proposed development that I had previously shown, kind of overlaid on that existing conditions plan with those 3 proposed multifamily units. As you're working your way down the road, there'll be some, parking with a roundabout turnaround for this private drive. The 3 buildings situated here, noting you'll see that we've pulled through the recommendation with the Conservation Commission, everything out of the 50-foot buffer. The project will include, as I mentioned, well, first I'll jump. This is the parking. We situated the parking on the other side of the building, away from the water, as far as we can, so it's parallel to the train tracks. Within that buffer area is that community greenway that will be constructed as part of the project. Here you'll see it's a a porous asphalt, multi-purpose path, bike and ped path. Again, through the recommendation of this commission, that will be porous asphalt, and will be also enhanced with landscaping and restoration, which Vicki will get into when she presents her landscape plan. So from the mean high water, 50 feet back, that's going to be that deeded easement to the city for the community space, and then there's that additional square footage of public open space that I was talking about, the park behind Building B. Next slide, please. So this is a big piece of the improvements for the project itself. It's stormwater improvement. There's a lot of asphalt, a lot of building that exists on that site right up to the edge of the water. None of it's treated. In fact, the stormwater now in the Ricci Lumber Yard is collected and goes into the sewer system. There's a combined sewer overflow system. It's been a long-standing initiative of the Department of Public Works to separate the stormwater and sewer, which we are doing as part of this project. In addition to that, where there is now runoff that is not treated, we will be treating the runoff. We'll be collecting it in deep sump catch basins, oil separator hoods, and we'll be directing those through stormwater treatment units, jellyfish units. Should have mentioned at the outset with respect to the stormwater, this project has already received an alteration of terrain approval. It received extensive review from TAC, this board, relative to stormwater too. So the stormwater has been vetted thoroughly. We also have a shoreland permit in hand as well, as recently as March. Next slide, please. So this is the development area. Again, we're going to be incorporating more stormwater management improvement. Starting down here, you'll see, and we'll be collecting, the building runoff and impervious surface areas that will be discharged through a treatment unit here, through this, and then outletted to the pond. There is another outlet over here, which are the subject of the direct impacts that we're talking about. That will be for that Ricci lumber. And this is that third outfall that'll be constructed. 2 of those outfalls do fall within that tidal wetland with below the highest observable tide. That's why we are here for those direct impacts. This and the one that's just off page left, it's a total of 209 square feet of total permanent impact to construct those outfalls. Within the parking area, we will be constructing an underground detention system to detain the water. The purpose of that is not necessarily to meet peak rates. We are discharging to tidal waters, so technically we do not have to detain. But at the recommendation of this board, we implemented underground detention to mitigate temperature for heat island effect during the summer when there's heavy rains and it's hot. That water will then be slowly released out through this treatment unit, through that outfall. In the rear here, we are implementing a rain garden, which will be both a stormwater feature and a very aesthetically pleasing landscape feature as part of the park. And also, again, at the recommendation of this board, this path has been made porous, so that will provide stormwater management function as well. Next slide, please. So what I'll do now is I'll turn it over to Vicki to present the landscape enhancement that we're proposing within the 100-foot tidal buffer, and then I'll come back up to review the proposed impact and mitigation that's shown in the wetland permit application.
Good afternoon, I'm Vicki Martell from Woodburn and Company Landscape Architecture. So you'll remember from our site walk here where, as Patrick had described, the 50-foot buffer along the North Mill Pond, that will remain largely undisturbed. We are going to do a few selected removal of invasive species, but as we were out there and you saw, there's a handful of places where we have some large Norway maples and things that we feel are providing beneficial components. We're going to leave those in place, but there are other places where those invasives can come out. We have notes that any areas of disturbance along that 50-foot buffer will be reseeded with a native grass mix. That mix will not be mown regularly, so that area can renaturalize. There are a few places, as Patrick mentioned, we pulled the buildings back out of that 50-foot buffer, but in order to accommodate that pedestrian pathway, we are impacting that buffer slightly in a few places, and also with the stormwater outlets, meeting the minimum point value or exceeding it. So that's the only change to the landscape plan from the previous submission, is the addition of more plantings. And then around the buildings themselves, we have foundation planting. Peter, if you want to go to the next slide, it might be easier to see. Thank you. Oh, do we not have our other sheet in there? That's okay.
I think that's the only landscape one in here.
That's all right. If you could go back to that.
I could go into the packet if you do a.
That's okay. I think you can get a good enough idea of it here. So around the building itself, there are little pockets where we have patios for the residents. The buildings are pretty much fully surrounded by foundation planting. They're a mix of native and non-native plantings. And then, as Patrick mentioned, we have an amphitheater type seating area that the public and the residents can use to look at the pond. And there's a rain garden there that's sort of a nod to the turntable for the railroad. There's a boardwalk proposed in there, and that would be a mix of native grasses and perennials. And then we have a handful of trees along in the parking and along the street to enhance those areas. So it should be a handsome setting for the building and buffer it from the mill pond.
So, thanks, Vicki. So if you want to go to the next slide. So this is where we'll get into that state wetland permit application. These are two exhibits that have been included in the permit application itself. One to depict impacts, which is what's shown here. The next slide, which I'll go to after I present this one, is the mitigation proposal. I will note, and it's included in your package, that we have had extensive consultation with NHDES as part of this submission. We've held 2 pre-application meetings with them. We've held 2 pre-application mitigation plan meetings with them as well. So what is shown here has been the result of those consultations. So first, just going through those impacts, first we do have the 209 square feet of permanent tidal wetland impact, and that is for those 2 outfalls that will fall below that highest observable tide line. They will stay above the mean high, though. Then the pink, which shown, and what we did is we tried to show, the existing versus proposed to get a sense of how it's an existing impact versus a proposed impact versus a existing and proposed impact. It gets a little kind of crazy when you try to do it all. I was studying it myself this today. But that pink itself is permanent previously disturbed tidal buffer zone impacts. So you can see where those highlights are and where they'll remain as impacts themselves. That's 34,639 square feet. There will be some temporary previously developed tidal buffer impact areas. Those are the yellow areas that are shown, and what those are temporary disturbance around what will be restoration areas. So you can see where we're removing the buildings, we're removing the roundhouse, areas where we're going to be, working around the path, where we're installing stormwater. Those are those temporary disturbances that are reflected here in yellow. The area over towards kind of the Ricci Lumber commercial side of things is that crosshatch. That was not as through consultation with NHDES, because that is more of a maintenance improvement project. We did not have to include that as part of the impact for the fee calculation, but we did want to reflect it on the plan to show. So that is, 57,234 square feet of area that is going to be repaved. But again, it's going to be improved, as it's going to be enhanced with landscaping, pedestrian improvements, and most importantly, stormwater management that doesn't exist right now. And then lastly is a forested wetland area that is this little, there we go. It's this little area here, and what that is, it's actually sitting in that little turntable. It's 6 feet below grade. It's just soil. It's been in concrete encasement 6 feet below grade. It has negligible value to it, but it does qualify as a wetland, so we do have to unfortunately include it as an impact itself, but it's 6 feet below grade, and quite frankly, it should be removed because it's a hazard. It's not safe. So that's kind of a summary of the impacts, and then what we try to do is incorporate those into a total table that kind of works back and forth with both this impact plan and then the next sheet I'll go through, which is our proposed mitigation plan. But again, you can see just overall, based on like the calcs that we have in the application, the total permanent impact is 36,376 square feet. Again, that a lot of that does include existing areas that are already previously disturbed. Total temporary impacts are 10,000 square feet that'll be restored and enhanced. So with that, what I want to do is go to the next slide. This is reflective of the proposed, the mitigation proposal, again, that we've reviewed several times with DES in order to calculate how we would mitigate the impacts for this project. First, just looking at those green areas, and those are described as previously developed tidal buffer zone restoration areas. So basically areas where there's impervious existing surface that's being converted to a pervious enhanced area. There's 22,354 square feet or 384 square feet of that restoration area. So again, as part of the mitigation proposal, that's a 1-to-1 calc. So that would be counted towards mitigating the total 36,376 square feet of impact, permanent impact we're requesting a permit for. And then the blue area, which is buffer enhancement area, which we're calling buffer enhancement. Again, that has a 10-to-1 ratio, so there is a total of 47,157 square feet of enhancement, which Vicki touched upon what's going to occur there, the additional landscaping, conservation seed mix, the removal of invasive species, et cetera. So, but as part of that mitigation proposal per DES regulations, that's a 10-to-1, so we're able to take credit for 4,716 square feet of that. So that total proposed mitigation on the plan itself is 27,107 square feet. The balance of that will be paid through the ARM fund, which was also included in your calculation as well. It's about 9,276 square feet that would be paid for impact that would be paid for through the ARM fund, which results in almost a $60,000 contribution to the ARM fund itself. So with that, again, this project has gone through a very rigorous review, and at the recommendation of a great recommendation, by the way, of the chair and the planning director, I did want to show some of the new members a graphic that I had not included in the state wetland permit application, but that we had used to kind of demonstrate how we got to this point over the 2 years of permitting. So Peter, if you want to start with that first slide. So here's the existing condition of the site. As existing, there's currently 110,110 square feet of permanent buffer impact that exists within the 100-foot tidal buffer. Next slide. So at the beginning of this process, even before my time, this project's been going on now for 5-6 years at this point, there was a rezoning process, and this was the concept that was contemplated as part of that rezoning. So you can see here, when this parcel was rezoned, and this was used as a demonstration of what was thought to be the future development, there was a proposal for 113,545 square feet of permanent buffer impact. So it was actually an increase from what's existing that was used as part of that rezoning process. Next slide. Parcel gets rezoned, we come in for conceptual. This was the first plan that we presented to the neighborhood, to you folks, to the planning board. We received a lot of feedback on this, great feedback, which is what the result of the plan we have today. You can see there were 3 larger buildings kind of bordering the water there, right up to that kind of 25-foot buffer. That total impact within the buffer would have been 146,157 square feet. So we got a lot of feedback on thinking of ways to try and improve that. So we took that back to the drawing board. That was back in September of 2019, I believe.
Yeah.
So we worked hard through that winter and that spring, and then submitted the first application, formal application for the CUP, and for site plan review, which would be the next slide, Peter. So a step in the right direction. We're reducing buffer impact. We're now actually below what's existing out there by about 13,000 square feet, but still receive quite a bit of feedback from all the different committees and boards to kind of take a harder look at different ways to maybe pull some of the buildings out of the buffer, reduce pavement, and that's when we started incorporating, underground parking and looking at options to really try to enhance the buffer further. The next iteration, after we received that initial feedback, again, kind of a step in the right direction, bumped it down a little bit, 89,000 square feet of impact, but still working through that process, through the feedback of the board. We came back with the next plan, which is what's before you here today. So going from 110,000 of existing down to about 81,000. So we're looking at, or almost 82. So we're looking at about 28,000 square feet, as I mentioned at the outset of this presentation, of removal of impervious surface from the buffer, in addition to the landscape and buffer enhancements that Vicki went over, and also the significant stormwater improvements that are being implemented as part of this project. So that concludes my presentation. Just to reiterate again, we do have the local approvals from 2021, which were the site plan review, wetland CUPs. We do have the state alteration of terrain permit in hand. We do have the NHDES shoreline protection permit in hand, and we are now just seeking to get through the New Hampshire Wetland Bureau for this dredge and fill permit application with your recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Questions? Barbara?
That was a great presentation. Thank you, Patrick. Since you brought it up, so with the rezoning, why that's up there, so the red marks the project we're talking about, or the...
Yeah, the development area.
So the development area to the right, does that mean there's not going to be any proposals in the future? I'm guessing you can't say that, but
I can't
I'm
say
making
that.
that assumption when you're taking those numbers out of the equation.
I can't say that for sure, but it's going to be extremely challenging to put something there. I can say that. Just looking at, how close you would need to be to the water with impervious surface. I can't speak for the future. Regulations change, what happens, but right now the intent is not, this applicant is not intending to move forward with an application there.
Okay, thank you. Allison?
I have a few questions. So one of them, and it's funny because I really don't remember, I thought we asked you about sea level rise and the potential flooding risk for the parking garage, and now I see it clear as day that the parking is going to last for 36 years, basically, and that you make reference to flood-proofing technologies will be deployed to relieve potential flooding in the parking garage by 2058, when the 100-year flood plan is expected to exceed the garage threshold. Such as what are you going to do to be able to protect those cars from sea level rise?
Well, the floodproofing would be what protects it.
Well, you're putting floodproofing in there now, but that's not the type that's going to protect it from water rushing into that area.
Right. we're implementing floodproofing. It's an unoccupied space. We're implementing floodproofing as per the regulations. I guess I don't have any other response other than that.
Could you maybe just like describe what that actually looks like? Is it a door that goes up and down?
No,
and
I mean,
is
it's
so
actually,
secure,
it's
or-
actually sealing off the foundation itself with like a membrane that'll protect it from water intruding it. And the foundations themselves.
And the doors.
Yeah.
Okay, another question was related to the fact that there are no buildings this height in this area, and there's a letter from the United States Department of the Interior that talks about how there's no provision allowing for the take of migratory birds or unintentionally killed or injured by otherwise lawful action. And so I'm just wondering how birds are going to be protected from striking the windows during their migration patterns.
We're just building the buildings within what is allowed by the regulations. We've gone through this quite a bit.
I thought this was a regulation that the Department of the Interior had regarding protecting migratory birds.
I don't have a good answer for you other than we're building the building heights that are allowed by the zoning.
Then I have another question. There's a letter from the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department that talks about no sumps and that catch basins need to be daylighted. And then I looked at the catch basins and the fact that there is a sump being used, and I was just wondering if you could talk me through how these are meeting the requirements that New Hampshire Fish and Game set forth.
So, okay, yes. So as part of that, and that actually comes with the alteration of terrain process. So the catch basins themselves, the sumps are eliminated, and what we do is we put pre-treatment units in them so that that takes care of the pre-treatment.
Yeah, I think they were worried more about waterfowl or
Yep.
mammals
So-
or whatever getting
and
caught
that-
in them.
and that's why
Like,
we
how do you daylight it?
We eliminate the sump so that there is no sump, and it's treated through a pre-treatment unit before it goes through the full treatment unit.
Well, on page 258 in our packet, C509 of your data sheet, it says that you have a sump, and that's what I don't understand.
Okay, then I will take a look at it. If you'd like to stipulate that we adhere to what NHB recommended, I'd be happy to have that as a stipulation of approval.
Okay. And that's all I have.
Any other questions? Just looking to see if I had anything.
I can ask a question
Yeah.
while we're
Go ahead,
quiet
Barbara.
here. Along that with the recommendations from Fish and Game, they do recommend, and this may be just, I can't find it, not to use any plastic material, and I believe that's like in the erosion control and everything. And I didn't see that noted on the landscaping plans or anything. It just said do whatever it takes
Okay.
to avoid erosion.
Yeah, if you'd like to stipulate that just to reinforce it, we're happy to.
Yeah,
Accept
that would be great.
Go ahead.
No, okay.
Can you confirm, I think last time, 2 years ago, we talked about the trail not being lit. Is that still the case, the community
Yes,
pathway?
that is the intention. Ultimately, it's the city's decision. That'll be
Okay.
their trail.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, yeah.
This is a trail follow-up question. So I don't know how much control you have over what's going on that trail, but the other thing that we had asked for originally was either fencing or definitely signage about dogs. And I didn't see that, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
Again, city community easement. If we're happy, if it's not shown, I can check, but if you'd like us to add signage about, I know that's been a similar recommendation to other projects on the other side of the North Mill Pond. We're happy to accept that.
Yeah, that would be great. And yeah, I feel pretty strongly about that one because on Hudson Brook going further up where that new development is, it's like everybody's walking their dog there and a lot of them are loose going down into the brook. So there's
Saw
no
that
signs
this
there.
morning, yes.
So you want leashed, sign for leash dogs or no dogs?
Well, I think this might take working with the city. Is that true? Because, I mean, how do
Well, we
we?
also have our wetland boundary markers that came in after this project was originally okayed, and I think that those should be in place as well.
Right, in addition to it.
Yeah, I think those are similar recommendations that we received for the Rains Ave and Green Street projects as well that were also approved, so we're happy to accept those.
So kind of would be to work with the city on that? Or 'cause-
Well, you could make the stipulation, and then the city will have the easement, so we'll have to
Yeah.
put it in.
yeah, all dogs leashed and,
So that's a signage recommendation.
somehow enforced.
Yeah. I haven't been here for the prior conversations about this project, unfortunately. Are we are we approving the trail tonight as well, or is that going to be like a separate conversation, or
the
like the public space?
The
How much
public, it's been approved from a site plan standpoint through the local approval process. What we're here for is the impacts for that trail, so and the project itself, but all the impacts for the state dredge and fill project. So.
So this is like this is the permit for that part of the trail as well. Okay.
So, yeah, so it's there, it's shown as a pervious trail in the buffer, and that, they
Correct.
calculated that, the whole thing is part of there.
Right.
Yep.
But then the management of it will come to the city in terms of lighting and
It has an
and
easement to the
signs.
city, yep.
Yep, the applicant is bearing, the impact, paying for that and mitigating that, but ultimately it's the city's trail. So.
Cool, okay. And I had just like a couple little things that I just noticed, and maybe there's like easy explanations for these, but, so on in the DES permit, page 2 of 9, section 1, 2, it says there's no marshes located within the project limits.
There is a salt marsh, but we're not proposing any work within that.
Even though like your outfalls and your
They're
little
above
curtains
it.
and things?
Yeah, there's actually quite a drop in grade along that slope where the salt marsh sits down low at the water. We're not getting into that grade at all or down there, and even the head walls are much higher up.
Oh, so you're sitting kind of like above the salt marsh?
Yeah. It's when you walk, if you get a chance to walk the site, especially behind these buildings, you can see it kind of falls off quite a bit
Yeah.
in terms of grade. So yeah, we're well above of that salt marsh.
Okay, but then the outfall the water's gonna just,
It'll be, yes, but it'll be treated, dissipated by the riprap aprons, and with the intent to not impact that.
and the riprap aprons are some impact too, I would
But they're
assume.
above again.
They're also above?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they're designed as plunge pools to dissipate the flow so that it slowly kind of trickles over the slope down towards the salt marsh.
And I also just had questions about the sea level rise projections. It looks like you chose kind of a medium risk tolerance when picking out your kind of sea level rise projections to use. And I was curious why you deemed this project a medium tolerance. I guess I would consider it a high. To consider low tolerance, I guess, is what I would, given the investment and the number of people that are going to be occupying this space.
Sorry. That's probably more of a wetland scientist question who's not here at this moment, but.
What's the finished floor elevation, do you know?
Yeah.
So it's page 95 is where I was looking.
So the finished floor of the buildings with the basement level parking is 17.5, so it's set up, 8 feet above what is flood elevation right now. And then similarly, the slab on grade, that's a 14.5 elevation, so that's, that's 5 feet above the current flood elevation.
Yeah, go ahead, Jess.
I don't know if this is a question for you, Patrick, or the city, or maybe even just the commission, but did we talk somewhere along about bank stabilization and planting and trying to create a natural buffer sort of between the pond and the trail and those kinds of things? I thought that we had talked about that somewhere, and it's, my understanding is now you're just kind of talking more about a seed mix, so.
So, yeah, anything down, because we're trying to avoid any work below that mean high water mark as part of this project, but the city is going to have that easement that goes out to mean high water, so they would have the ability in the future to
it'd be more
perform
of a
work
city
within
thing.
that easement for stabilization.
Okay.
I can go again. Sure. So to follow up on that, so that's more like a living shoreline kind of thing
Yes,
later on that
exactly.
we had all those presentations on. And so I do have a question on the landscaping, and this is just because of what's going on in the city with other projects. We get these great landscaping plans, which this looks like, but then we end up with what, in the end, with like this grass, and it might be a seed, native flower seed mix or whatever, but it's still maintained. And I know that in the plans, it says that it will be mowed once a year, the non-woody vegetation. But I also really don't see a lot of area where we're going to have a lot of shrubs, which is what a lot of seems like the things that Fish and Game mention are the habitat of like the thickets and everything for the birds to come in and feed and nest on. And that, not what I see in the plan. So I guess this is somebody could explain that to me a little bit better. So
Certainly. So the seeding is just a remediation effort for the sort of surgical areas of impact that we're going to have. So all the existing shrubs out there will remain, the existing woody vegetation will remain, and the seeding is just a mediation effort in those small areas of disturbance. So we're not proposing to like wholesale go in, clean out that area, replace it with this seed mix, and then maintain it on a yearly basis. That's just a treatment for these small areas of impact.
So there's not like a line then on the plan. I don't know if you could maybe point to.
So that entire 50-foot buffer is going to be preserved. And it's just a matter of the places where, if we have to do some invasive removal, we do some seeding around that. If there's an area where the path needs to go through and we have that condition right on the edge of the path that needs to be remediated, that's where that seeding would happen. We do have a shoreline impact plan. I'm not sure if it's part of this presentation or not. That calls out all the existing trees of a certain caliber on there. We didn't locate every single shrub and perennial and all that vegetative growth, but that 50-foot buffer is going to be maintained in its existing state and in some select places supplemented.
So it's not like there's a line on both the left and the right, but where the turntable is, that is not, and the path comes through. That's not
Right.
going to be grass on either side of the path. It's going to be just a little area.
So in the areas like where it's pulled back and the path isn't sort of creating that line of demarcation from the buffer to the development, we do have a mow line on our plan that's not maybe visible here. But there is a mow line delineated on there of what will be maintained regularly as lawn by the property maintenance and then what will serve as buffer. And I don't know if we can zoom in or look at L2 in the packet, but we do have a mow line delineated.
I don't think I have a way to zoom in any further. That's full screen.
It's on out here. It is on L1.
What page is that, Jess?
259, I think.
That I'm highlighting up here where that mow line sits, starting down page right and kind of working your way up. That's that mow line. So where
It's called out in the corner here.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So where it's coming in, you have the rain garden, that area will be maintained as lawn, but anything beyond that line and then beyond this path
There's a mow area
is
beyond
where
the line.
it will be just mowed annually.
Okay, so just that, and then on the left is,
There's nothing on the left.
It's the same thing.
I don't think is there a mow line on the left? Oh,
left side of the building?
oh, maybe
Yeah,
one-
there
that
is.
little
It's
triangle?
it's hard to see. It's actually it follows just beyond the tree calipers here, up to the path. So that would be kind of an annual mow, and then within here is like a small lawn area where we have the trees adjacent to the path, because we have to regrade there. There'll probably be a lot of pedestrian walking through there anyways. So,
And then the path itself acts as the mow line, like from that turnaround
exactly.
until the other side of the building.
Yep. Anything up in here is the annual maintenance.
So that 50-foot buffer is not going to have any regular mowing within it.
And that's, okay. So it's going to be marked too? So nobody mows it? Is that how you're,
So it's delineated on these plans.
right, but later?
Can you speak in the
Mowing
mic?
is a maintenance thing, so.
Well, I think it'll be kind of delineated by it's a different lawn vegetation area, right?
Correct, so the seed mix will be different. And then it will be, once it's established, it will be apparent because the lawn will be mowed on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And then beyond that mowing will only take place once per year. So that line will be clear.
Okay, so my experience of many years of working on restoration projects is that I don't think that's a guarantee.
Sure.
And so I would request some sort of signage.
Yeah, would you like to have some sort of permanent delineation, like at a certain interval along that mow line?
Like if the wetland boundary markers would help to do that.
If you did it right there, you have to spell it out. I mean, you can't just say wetland boundary markers, or you've got to say no mow. And that's every single project we've worked on. Somebody comes in eventually and mows everything down, including woody debris. It's, if it's not the same person that designed it, it's not the same person that, maintains it all the time either, so.
Certainly, and I understand you can't put all your faith in the applicant to maintain that. That would certainly be their intention, but maybe we could have some sort of signage that encompasses the wetland protection, the dogs, and that mowing in sort of an efficient wording so that it could appear at whatever
At the right
interval you wanted.
places. Yeah.
And I think that mow line would be an appropriate place to locate it. In some places, that's right on the edge of the path, and in other places, it would be, outboard of that where we snake the path in.
That would be great. Thank you.
Other questions? Do we have any public comment? Zoom too?
Nobody on Zoom. No. I mean, there's somebody on Zoom, but they don't have their hand raised.
Okay. Pardon?
I don't think so.
Not to make a comment.
There's some extras, I think. I didn't know the count. Good afternoon, Elizabeth Bratter, property owner, 159 McDonough Street. This project abuts my property on both sides of the mill pond, so I'm very familiar with it and have been involved. I think I've missed 2 meetings. I would like to point out a couple of just basic errors, which I perceive as errors, but they may not be. In the application, they show that Lot 164-4 is owned by the Portsmouth Hardware and Lumber, and it's on pages 128 and 130 of the packet, 77 and 79 of the application, but that's actually the railroad tracks, so I'm pretty sure that's not owned by RISI. In section 1 of the standard dredge and fill application on page 2 of the 7 pages, in the packet, page 63, the question, is there potential to impact impaired waters, Class A waters, or outstanding resource water? That's not answered, and since the North Mill Pond is impaired, they might want to put the answer to be yes. Now that we're done with those things, before you is to approve something that has already been approved but an alternate was added and presented, and it may take longer to happen, but it could have a better outcome. This is quite a quandary. Please do not move this amendment forward to New Hampshire DES. Please ask the development team to return with what was presented to you in February. If you look at the second sheet that I gave you, it shows the 2020 proposal, which is what's being proposed today, with the 240-foot long 12-inch pipe, which was presented for the rain garden. It's actually an environmental oxymoron, because first there is a rain garden, which is great, and then it has 240 feet of pipe that has to be dug into the ground for overflow so it can meet catch basin 3. The proposal made, which is on the front page in February, changed outfall 3, and you can see how it was moved quite a bit. And those changes were actually very good. They shortened the length of the drainage pipe, and it moves the outfall further to the left, if you're looking at it. I think that's west. And that's moved away from the highest rank habitat, which you can see on page 204 on this piece of property. The movement of outfall 3 provides the best management practice of avoidance and minimal impact. It is understandable coming back before some boards, again, is not desirable at all by the team. And generally, it would add more time to this project. But the project is behind anyway. And the team knows exactly what TAC and the Conservation Commission would want to see done to have those outfalls changed. They could make it even simpler by just changing outfall 3, which could provide the greatest gain to the environment and save money for the developer. Please do not approve this DES application, since there is a better alternative, which was presented and argued for in February. Now, just in regards to some of the stuff you discussed, in regards to the invasive species along the water's edge, there are quite a few of those, I'm terrible with names, so there's quite a few of those beautiful bushes that are green on one side, they have little bit white leaves on the left, and then they have beautiful white flowers in the spring and berries in the fall that the birds love. They grow along the water's edge. They're going to be removing those. And my suggestion would be to make a stipulation if they remove more than 2 or 3 shrubs in a row, as opposed to putting the little plant mix, that maybe they put 2 or 3 regular native shrubs. Other than that, I support everything that you do, and I understand fully. This has been a long journey from what we started from, and they've made improvements all along, and they should be recognized for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any hands raised?
No hands raised.
Sam, can we have Patrick address
Yeah.
our comments?
Yeah. Do you have a specific question, or you just want him to?
Just address the comments, like why was the change made?
Yeah. Patrick, would you mind coming up and addressing the comment, just the change in the outfall from the last time to this current time? Because I do remember it was in a different spot and it was advocated for, and then we're back to. I kind of feel like there were trees that had to be taken out or something, and that's why it went back.
Yes, that's correct. There would have been additional tree removal. So this actually, with respect to planting, this actually results in additional plantings from that prior version that was submitted to you folks.
So the trade-off then is what we're approving tonight, less cut in trees
And more
along-
planting.
and more of this landscaping planting, and then this longer pipeline, which has some degree of disturbance.
It's buried, but yeah.
Is that the,
It, at the surface, there's no disturbance, but yes, it's a longer pipe run. But from a vegetation standpoint, this is an improvement.
and in terms of the outfall part, that's actually the wetland impact
The
part.
outfalls would have been designed exactly the same, so that wouldn't matter.
And the, sorry.
Go ahead.
Cross, like there's so many plans. cross-section of the outfall and the height of the outfall? Do you know what that is?
They're actually included in the
Yeah,
wetland permit package. I can.
I hate this. There's too many plans and I can't.
There's a lot of plans. Yeah.
I can't get around on this as easily.
Towards, I don't remember the exact appendix. If you bear with me, I can find it pointing in that direction. But there are specific cross-sections within the application that demonstrate how those outfalls are constructed with the plunge pools and showing how it does not
212.
does not get below mean high water.
Page 212?
Just I can't find them right now, though.
Really?
There we go. So, it's going to be in the rear, but yeah. So, sorry, I don't have them up here, but these we do have actual specific cross sections towards the back of the package. Let me find out what appendix it is.
I'm on a different one, so I'm on the old one.
Is that it? That's, yes, this is one of them. This
And then the
is,
rain garden one.
I think this is the rain garden one,
Page 214, Liz.
right? So this is the one that comes out.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get them to the right appendix.
Does that make sense?
Oh, actually, this is, yeah, it's included. Kind of,
And I was thinking of cross-section in the rain garden, not the actual outfall cross-section, but,
the cross section in the rain garden.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's one in the detail sheets as well. Of the plan set.
Hold on, let's see.
It's a standard NHDES rain garden cross section with the filtration material. Again, it's been reviewed by the city and NHDES, so it's designed in conformance with those regulations.
I think that was you I was with one time where we saw one that was installed that you had designed and they installed it totally way too low.
It's very possible, but the good news is the city's been implementing oversight during construction.
Yes.
So that is less likely to happen now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Are we ready for a motion? I know there's a lot of stipulations.
Well, I'll make a stab.
Okay.
I'll recommend approval of this application with additional signage that demarcates leash dogs, wetland boundary markers, and no-mow areas. And then another stipulation is that the New Hampshire Fish and Game requirements are followed, including the fertilizer, the sumps, the daylighting, the catch basins, et cetera.
No plastic.
Yes. I don't know if there's anything else anyone else wants to add.
There's also the no plastics piece.
Oh, that's true. That was what I forgot.
Plastics.
And no plastics in any of the erosion control materials.
I also had, this is from our CUP, but might as well put it on here too, to use dark sky friendly lighting. And then
Turn them off at night.
the bird friendly windows, do you want to add that?
Well, it'd be great if everybody put decals up in their windows, but, I mean, a lot of times those are supposed to be put on the outside of the window, not the inside, because
Right.
the outside is where they see it.
Okay, well, we have, if we don't do the bird friendly windows, I have 6 different stipulations.
There's also the comment about the shrubs. I don't know if we want to make any request around shrubs versus grassy things.
We can.
Replacing shrubs in kind? That's what I wrote.
What's the stipulation?
Replacing shrubs in kind?
What does that mean?
Question mark.
Well, I thought all they were going to be removing was invasive
Right.
species.
So, and there's a lot of them, so.
And, yeah, and the thing is that, I think it was, Elizabeth was referring to the autumn olive,
Right.
and the birds do love it. hence we have so many of them. I don't
know.
think they're not allowed to import or plant
No,
autumn
no, I know.
olive, so.
No, I don't mean in kind with the same species. I mean in kind, a shrub for a shrub.
Oh, okay.
Well, how does that jive with the landscape plan, though?
Yeah,
I mean,
I know, that's like, I think that's such a
That's
huge
pretty-
change
yeah.
at this point, that I think it's too much.
Okay, so we've got 6 stipulations. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Yes. Discussion?
I'll be happy when we don't have this in front of us anymore.
I did want to say that last time we brought up the birds, I know we did, and I know you kind of, the reaction is, it's not required, but
It would be a good recommendation to make to the residents of the building, to put
Yeah.
decals on their windows, just to stop bird strikes.
because the light's going to hit those buildings, and it's just going to be, and it's kind of our responsibility, so,
I appreciate the comment, and the applicant is watching, so
yeah,
they were here.
that would be great.
Ted?
Yeah, I'm going to be voting against this, and I voted against the conditional use permit when this first came out. I don't think this meets the 6 criteria in any way. It does not, so it's my opinion.
Any more discussion?
I just have one more question, and this is a little bit outside of like our jurisdiction, I know, but just, I mean, was there any conversation with this project around affordability? Like, is there any, these are all market rate condominiums, is that? I guess I'm just, is there any, 'cause obviously there's a lot of public space, but I'm just thinking about the other sort of social values that,
That would be part of the planning board review, but I don't think it'd be the purview of this board.
no, I know, but is there anything to share about that?
I can't
The
remember.
outcome
I
of
think,
that?
I'm sure it came up, but I can't remember where
Okay.
it went. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't remember.
But there's nothing in this project around
No.
below market
Not that
rate?
not that we're counting.
Ready for a vote? Yep. All in favor? Opposed? And Abby's recusing herself? Okay.
Oh, Brian.
Am I supposed to?
Oh,
vote?
so Brian should
I didn't
vote?
catch, I did not vote, because I didn't catch that she was not voting. I vote in favor.
Okay, so we have, I think
1,
it's the
2,
same.
3, 4, and 1. Did you vote?
Did I vote?
Yeah.
Yes, I voted in favor.
I think it's 6-1.
6-1. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Sorry, Brian.
Thank you,
Sorry
folks.
about
I
Thank
do
you.
appreciate all your time, especially the ones who sat through this the last 2 years. We do appreciate all the feedback and hard work you guys put in. Thank you.
Last 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next. Next on the agenda is State Wetlands Bureau applications for minimum impact for 39 Holmes Court.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Eric Sowry from Altus Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. We're looking at 39 Holmes Court, which is in the south end. It's a tiny, tiny little lot. It's 0.06 acres. Do we have a plan, Peter? Did you? And I do apologize. I don't think these plans made it into the electronic application that you guys have, unfortunately. But this one is very simple.
This is 39.
This is 39, yep. All right, this is the lot right here. This is the next application at 43. So the blue line through the middle is the 100-foot setback for tidal waters, so that's the state buffer. There is no city buffer here and no conditional use permit. So we're looking at 2 different impacts. One is in the shoreland zone, which is the 150 and out, and the other one is the 150 back towards the water. And what we're doing on this one is taking overhead power and putting it underground. It's in an existing paved area. It's part of Holmes Court itself, and that will service the house at 39 Holmes Court, which is going to stay, and the next application will be 43 Holmes, which will be a new house going in there. So it's impact in existing paved areas, and the only other piece of it, this little box right here, a little gray block you can see there, that's a heat pump that's being added on the side of the building there. That's going to have crushed stone around it that should allow some infiltration of that additional impervious surface. So total impact in the 100-foot buffer is only 260 square feet and no wetlands impact of any kind. So that's it for this one. This one's pretty simple. Questions?
Questions?
You're starting with 39, right?
Starting with 39,
Just
yep.
39, yeah.
Yep.
I'm just trying to log in to see it on my own iPad. Working.
So the plan here is to save 39, keep 39, and take down 43 and replace it.
That's correct.
What is 39 going to be used for? Is it going to be used by the owner? Or
It's the same owner for both. I don't know what he intends long-term, but right now there are long-term tenants living there, from what I understand.
okay.
No other questions? Ready to make a motion? Allison?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to the Wetlands Board to approve the application for 39 Holmes Court.
Second? Jess? Discussion? Pretty straightforward. Okay. Ready for a vote? All in favor? Opposed?
Yeah.
Unanimous.
Every time I have to watch.
Okay, and then moving on to 43.
Yep. Again, Eric Sowery from Altus Engineering, here on behalf of the applicant, Steve Singlar, and that's the plan there. This is a tear down rebuild. We're on right on the water here. Water is right here. Just to get your bearings, up on this side is Saunders Lobster Market, so you guys can figure out where you're at. They have a dock now and an existing house that's been there for quite some time. This project went through the zoning board as well as HTC, and we're granted approvals on both of those boards. The lot itself is 0.12 acres. Again, another very tiny, tiny south end lot. So there's not a lot of room to move there. What the proposal is looking to do is to remove the house and build a new one. It's approximately the same square footage with a little couple add-ons in there, and then redoing the rest of the site. This has no impacts to wetlands directly, and again, we're in the 100-foot buffer only for tidal marsh, or tidal water, sorry. The net reduction in impervious surface is 951 square feet versus what is there, so it's a vast improvement. And we accomplished that through taking this chunk right in the front here, which is existing asphalt pavement, that becomes pervious. There's an asphalt walkway that goes all the way around the back there, that's coming up. There's a shed in the back that's going away. I think it's right there, actually. That shed's going away. Another walkway is getting replaced. Those are just stepping stones in grass. There's a solid patio that's coming out and a new deck that's going in, but I've designed the deck to have the ability to infiltrate water. So underneath it is going to be about a foot of crushed stone. And there'll also be drip edges around the entire perimeter wherever there would be a roof that is going to have a water pouring off of it as opposed to gutters. So all the water gets infiltrated and a net reduction in impervious surface. But to do that, we need an impact of 4,650 square feet in the wetland buffer itself. Pursuant to the site walk we had last week on a very cold day for May, I did speak to the applicant, and he is completely on board with doing a landscape plan for this site, and I would have asked Vicki how long that would take, but she just escaped. But she'll be doing the plan once I corner her. So again, this is just a wetlands permit only and no CUP permit. That's it in a nutshell. So any questions? Oh, Ted, I also put the NOFA standards on there for you.
Very good, thank you.
You said there was a drip edge going around all of the houses. What's happening right over the deck?
Actually, the deck's the only place where we don't have a drip edge, obviously, but that's on the deck, which is designed for infiltration.
So you will just have water going
It'll
straight off?
bounce off the deck and go through the slats and then down into the stone.
Okay.
So it's the same kind of thing, essentially.
Okay, just, if you're walking out of the deck and it's.
Yeah, I know,
Okay.
but
And then, so this, the orange block there, is that all the So my question is, you have a little stoop area that comes off the north side that
Yep.
is not in orange.
Yeah,
Is
that is just, it's just a roof that overhangs a little walkout.
Yep.
It's got an exit from the building on that side.
But it is still impervious.
It's still impervious,
Okay.
yeah. That, actually, now that you point that out, might be the only place I did not put a drip edge. So I'll have to look at that.
Okay.
Because if you step down, and it's kind of weird to step into a drip edge, but I'll think of something for that. That's a good question.
And is that number, however many square feet that is that part of the proposed impervious cover amount that you factored in?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, and the reduction.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, Allison.
Where does all the snow go?
Right now, that's a very good question. The parking is essentially this exact same that it is right now, and I think what they do is they push it off this end here, which is grass and landscaping, and they must do it on this side, right in that area of grass as well, because there's a fence right here. So I don't think they can get in there to plow it, to be honest with you. It's pretty tight, so I think it's a snow blow or a shovel type of operation, actually. I don't know if they're actually going to be there in the winter, though. I think this is a summer home.
I'm just wondering, it's Holmes Court is a city street, right?
It is up to a point. It's a really weird situation. It stops right here on the edge of 39. So as it crosses 39, it's actually in an easement. So the public right-of-way doesn't even touch this lot. So it's another one of those weird situations that exists in the south end.
And when you talk about the planting plan, I hope it includes plants around the entire periphery that faces any water, because we like to have plants other than lawn going up to the water's edge.
Yeah, I agree. My directive to Vicki is going to be just that, and that's going to be along this edge. There's a little bit of landscaping there now, but I think it needs some beefing. And along the wall itself, over here, there was a little bit of landscaping, so I don't know how much we're going to add there. And the one tree, the only tree on the entire site, is going to stay. And then, of course, around the building itself. So that's going to be my recommendation to her, to sort of fluff this up a little bit and soften it.
So, Peter, since we're not seeing that, is that something that you guys would look at and approve?
It's not, because it's a state wetland permit, so we don't really, I mean, we can review it as part of the,
Well, we'll just stipulate it.
You could send it to the state, that recommendation. I think that'd be the best way to do it.
Okay.
I'd be happy to show it to you once we get it. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, we just won't have any administrative review and then compliance review.
Okay.
Go ahead, Barbara.
I was just going to ask, so I think you have something in there about maintenance on that new pervious driveway somewhere?
Yep, I believe there should be a detail. I don't know if you've got that, Peter, but it's standard notes for maintenance of a driveway like that. Every now and again, it's going to have to be vacked, and of course, no sand or salt.
Okay, I didn't see the no sand or salt on that.
Okay.
But,
If it's not there, it better be. It should be. It will be. How about that?
and my other question about that is if that could be something that would be put in beyond just the plan and in the deed or somewhere else.
On the deed, I don't know. He already owns it, so it's not like he's not conveying it.
But when it does convey, that's the thing.
Yeah, I can tell him that. It might be years from now, though. Things like that get forgotten.
Paver maintenance?
Yeah.
But, I mean,
The detail here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know that,
no.
but
What are you
further.
asking about?
Maintenance to be put in beyond just the
Oh,
plan.
yeah.
So that the owner has a maintenance manual or maintenance.
I don't know, Peter, what do you think on
You'd have
that?
to recommend that to the state as well, so.
Yeah, in terms of conveying it long-term, because she's got a great point about what happens when they convey this out to somebody else,
Yeah.
say 20 years from now. How do we
I think
get
if the
that message
registry will
across?
accept it, you could submit it to the registry if you
Yeah.
make it a stipulation.
Okay, see what happens.
Yeah.
We'll just put it in there as a recommendation. so
Okay.
Let us know.
Yeah, Abby.
What is, well, vinyl siding and windows aside, what is the age of the house?
I believe it's about 250 years old.
250?
Yeah, and
Okay.
the mechanicals are failing from what I understand. There's slight rot starting to set in from what I've been told, and it's got the typical low ceilings. And no closets, of course.
And know what?
No closets, or at least modern closets. People had less clothes back then.
I noticed there's, you've got the footprint drawing, but you don't have any elevations of what this, are you building higher? I think you mentioned that in the site visit, but I might have gotten
It's
mixed up with
still going to
another.
be 2 stories, and it's going to look very similar to what's there now.
Okay.
So it's not going to be 2 stories and a roof. I believe it's got the roof sort of folded into the second floor.
Okay,
So a height variance, we didn't need one, is from what I recall.
okay.
And you're not having to raise it at all.
The finished floor has to come up. Right now, it's a little low. Floodplain's at 8.
Yep.
Elevation 8 in this neighborhood. We're looking to bring it up to 13.
Okay.
Just to get above it and then more, because we're right on the water. We know it's going to get hit at some point in the future, and it could be
Gotcha.
50 years from now, but we want to plan ahead.
Okay.
They would have to build the 10 with the new floodplain ordinance, but
Okay.
they're going to
So they're
13.
We want to take it up a little bit. There will
Okay.
be mechanicals underneath, but above the floodplain.
Gotcha.
So we need room for all that, but we're thinking this, if this really goes the way everyone's saying, and everything keeps melting, we're going to need to
Yeah.
be up to 13.
So then with the 2 stories, you're still fine with
Yeah,
the
from what I
height?
understand, we did not need a
Yeah.
height variance.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and just thinking about the sea level rise, there's a comment here in your application that I would question. So hopefully you are like thinking hard about the sea level rise piece, about that you expect there'll be a less than 1 foot of sea level rise in the next 70 years. That's
got to be a
It's
typo.
not
There's no way.
typical guidance right
No,
now.
not at all, not at all.
I mean, it sounds like the 13 feet sounds like you're
Yeah,
taking into
it's accounted for, so
consideration,
that's
but-
got to be a typo, so.
Okay.
Do you have a page number for that? Because I'd like to.
Yeah, page 23 on the packet that you submitted.
Okay.
Yeah.
1 foot SLR question mark. Okay, definitely. Thank you for pointing that out.
And then what are you doing with the basement? What's
The
happening down there?
basement's just going to be a basement. I mean, it's not, I mean, it's going to be a full basement, from what I understand, but we can't put any mechanicals below the floodplain. I actually think below 10.
You can't even have a basement. It has to be, you'll have to look at the floodplain ordinance for that. So you're going to have
Okay,
to.
maybe I'm wrong, then maybe this is just a crawl space. I do
Unless
so
it's
much-
unless the building inspector treats it as an existing basement.
Okay.
You're not
Well, it's got to go
rebuilding-
through the building.
Are you rebuilding the basement, or
What's that?
is it a new basement, or is it?
It's going to be new, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to have to be a flow-through
Okay.
scenario.
In that case, I misspoke. It's going to have to go through building department anyway.
Yeah.
So, okay. I will flag that to the architect.
Other questions? Ready for a motion? Allison?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of this plan with a couple of stipulations. One is that the pervious paver maintenance plan be placed in the deed. And the second is that there will be plantings around the periphery of the property that borders the water sides.
A second.
Discussion? Okay. Ready for a vote? All in favor? Opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? The 6 of us if we're all voting? 7? 7 of us? Okay. Next is other business, 365 Little Harbor Road.
Good afternoon. I see some familiar faces, but a few I don't recognize. So for the record, and for those who may not know me, I'm Mark Jacobs, soil scientist and wetland scientist. I've been practicing here in New Hampshire for about 37 years. I'm here to represent the Doliacs at 365 Little Harbor Road. Back in summer of 2021, in preparation for a wedding at this location, I believe their daughter got married on the property. They were trying to spruce the property up and had a miscommunication with their landscaper, and what was supposed to be some light pruning of waterfront shrubbery turned into a complete denuding of an area of about 1,500 square feet represented in green on the top graphic there that you see before you. Subsequently, Mr. Doliak contacted me about the situation, and he advised me to self-report the situation to both the city and to the state of New Hampshire. So this wasn't a situation where somebody did some sleuthing and came up with a violation, or nor did a neighbor drop a dime on the Doliaks. I want it to be on the record that he recognized that this wasn't a good situation, and he had me report it. So Mr. Britz and I and David Price from DES met on the property in August of 2021, and it was discussed at that time that no after-the-fact state permit would be needed, because it was agreed that Mr. Doliak would have me put together a restoration plan to propose some plantings to try to restore the area to its former condition as much as possible. So there's no after-the-fact permit, but I have since prepared a restoration program and submitted it to DES, and they have approved it, and you have a copy of that approval as well. Actually, the deadline for implementing that is almost upon us here, June 1st. So I'll be requesting an extension of some period of time. I'm not sure how much. From DES, and I'll notify you folks of that as well when that happens. Historically, a little context, historically this entire area was covered in lilacs many years ago and for many years, and then as you know, lilacs can be susceptible to a mildew, and indeed that's what these lilacs succumb to. And subsequent to all those lilacs dying, the area was largely planted with forsythia shrubs, and it's been that way for many years. The area also has a significant population, unfortunately, of Asian bittersweet out there as well, and I'm somehow wondering if that's where the confusion came in and how the area got denuded, because maybe the landscaper thought that he was supposed to take everything out. But at any rate, we've proposed to replant with. There were two small trees that were taken down as part of this misunderstanding as well. We've proposed to put in 2 red maple in place of what I believe were a black locust, which is a bit of an invasive species, tree species. There's quite a bit of it actually on the adjoining state property there, the mansion, the Coolidge Mansion. But we're also proposing juniper, more forsythia, and sheep laurel as well out there. I should note that, again, the root systems of the vegetation were not removed. No soils were exposed. The area is stable. There's been no erosion or sedimentation into the river at this location, and so we haven't installed any erosion sediment control, and probably won't. Although I do note in the state approval of our restoration program, they did specify it, but I'll talk to David Price about that when I ask him about the extension. I should also say that Mr. Doliak apologizes for not being here today, but he had prior obligations. So one of the reasons for being here was, I think, under normal process, we probably would go for an after-the-fact or be asked for an after-the-fact conditional use permit application, and I think it was agreed that may not be necessary in this instance, given that we're deferring to the state on this for the most part. But Peter asked if we would come make a presentation and solicit input from the commission, just the same, and I'm happy to do so. So.
I can speak to that too eventually, but go ahead and ask questions.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. One is, why is it taking so long?
Partly, a large part of that is due to my schedule. And the pandemic played into that a little bit as well, but I'm not gonna use the pandemic as an excuse.
How come there are not more native species going in?
The red maple, the juniper, and the sheeplo are all native species. The forsythia is not, it's an ornamental, as you know, but there was a lot of forsythia there before, and the owner would still like to replace some of that if possible.
No way to mix in some other native species?
Well, it's only, additional
It's
native
1,500
species.
square feet, you said.
Yeah, it's actually not that big of an area, and I've got it pretty tightly planted as it is with these species.
Okay.
They'll all grow over the top of one another pretty quickly.
Well, forsythia roots anytime it touches the ground, so.
Right.
Is there any way to find out who the landscaper was? Because they need to be notified that they need a permit to do something like that.
Well, that's an excellent point, and in fact, I believe DES has reached out. Mr. Doliak provided DES with the landscaper's contact information, and I believe they've been contacted. So they've been made aware of how to proceed in the future in shorefront areas, shoreland areas.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure.
Do you want me to speak to it a little bit?
Sure.
So, in the spirit of cooperation with DES, we've often done restoration plans. There's been cases where we found a violation, we went after the violation, and then the state doesn't require one because we took care of it. I guess in this case, I think if there was ground disturbance, they had not told anybody about it, it'd be a different situation. The fact that they came forward, there was no digging out of the bank. The bank is still intact, and they have a robust planting plan that I think is functionally better than what was there before. Makes me think they're fine, and, you know, I guess you could argue that a lot of what they took out was allowed, but a lot of it wasn't. So I'm satisfied with the planting plan, but didn't want to make that call myself without input from you guys. And I don't know, typically we do still have just had a call with DES today about a different violation that will be coming forward, but they do take a lot of time and they take a lot of energy, and I think you also can get conflicting plans when two different groups are trying to come up with a restoration plan. So to avoid that, I thought it made sense to go ahead and let the state's plan be the one they follow. That was my recommendation.
Yes.
Just more curiosity questions, since you mentioned the state property next door, does this property have to manage the Japanese knotweed? I know that's still something on the neighboring property.
Yeah, we don't have an infestation of Japanese knotweed at this location. Yeah, there's plenty of Asian bittersweet, and we may take some limited measures to try and control that, at least to give the plants we're installing a head start. I know Peter suggested that you folks may be concerned about the use of herbicides in the shoreland zone, and I assure you, my client, the property owner, is as well. He's not a big fan of herbicides. But if we do use them, we'll be using a method called cut and dab, because it results in minimal amounts of herbicide being applied. But again, it's sort of a last resort. He was actually very uncomfortable with me including anything in the program, but I thought we would be remiss if we didn't, again, because I want to make sure the plants don't get overtaken right away by the bittersweet, which is pretty aggressive.
Is the applicant familiar with the NOFA standards? I mean, I know we're kind of just offering guidance, but that's often something that we suggest or encourage our applicants to consider in their lawn care, and we now have a link through the website, the city website, where you can learn more about those standards and what it means, just especially since this is a creekfront property.
Right. I will. I'll look into that myself, and I'll encourage Mr. Doliak to look into that. I can tell you, he is not an intensive property management type. his lawn is, it's clear that he doesn't apply a lot of fertilizers and pesticides. The lawn is stable, it's not an erosion hazard in any way, shape, or form, but he is definitely not into high maintenance. If he thinks like I do, it's probably along the lines of the more I fertilize, the more I'm going to have to mow. So I subscribe to the same lawn management protocols.
Are we okay just letting this proceed? I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to us.
Absolutely.
There might be some interesting alternatives to the forsythia, though, if because, anyway.
Yeah.
Just things that add a different color of.
We're trying to strike a balance between as many natives as possible, but some of the color that the owner and his wife typically are fond of, so.
But there's some cool things that might flower slightly differently or offer a scent.
Okay.
Wonderful scent. I'm thinking of, blanking on names right now, but anyway, or different color stems so that
Okay.
in the winter it looks nicer and gives,
I'll take another look. Thank you.
20 something. Anyway,
Thanks,
there
Mark.
might have his preference and that might be locked in, but there's some really cool plants out there that could
Absolutely. Thank you.
perform the same function. Anyway,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
oh, Sunsweet, that's it.
So I just have one thing that I wanted to pass along.
Sure, of course.
So I just wanted to tell everybody that during the sustainability fair, our table was really busy almost the whole time. And Barbara had supplied us with an example of all the different things that you can do to modify stormwater, which was really a big hit. But I had almost to a person that came up to the table that was an adult. We had lots of children, but they all commented that they knew that we were volunteers and they appreciated the job that we were doing. So I don't think we hear that enough, and I just wanted to pass that along.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing it, Allison and Lynn. It's like you guys, a lot of time and effort.
And Jess for putting the whole
Yeah.
fair on.
All fair together.
It's a team effort, but
Here and Kate.
it's a big success, so.
You think you'll do it again, Jess?
Yeah.
In a couple of years, maybe?
No, we partnered with the library and we had a wrap-up meeting, and I think the consensus is because we received so much feedback from participants, as well as people who attended, that yes, probably. And people outside of our initial planning committee are already making plans about things that they will add to the sustainability fair next year. So, for example, the city arborist had talked about trying to coincide the sustainability fair with when they give all the trees out to the public. So it kind of feels like we can't not do it now. So.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Cool.
Want to do your ordinance talk?
Sure, yeah. So there was a meeting with a work group from the Conservation Commission to talk about ordinance updates, and we made some really good progress. Kate and I are going to write it up and get it to the commission in advance of a meeting, which would be a work session separate from a regular meeting. And we'll send something out, but the dates we're looking at are, today's the 10th, so we're probably not the 17th, but the 24th and 31st are the two dates at least that we'd like to try to get a work session together, see what people think about the changes recommended. And then once the commission is comfortable with the changes, they could decide to meet again or, or adopt, not adopt, but move forward with the next step in the process, which is meeting with the planning board as a work session and see what they have. They know they're interested in updating the wetland ordinance as well, and they'll have their own recommendations, but this was the process we talked about with the planning board, and that's where we are in it. So we don't have to get any dates yet from anybody, but those are the two that we're going to send something out about. And if those don't look good, we'll pick some other ones.
Were you looking at June 22nd for the joint one, or you don't know yet?
I think that's likely. Yep. If it all goes smoothly.
Quite on that topic, but has there ever been any discussion about limiting the the tree cutting, like if it's a certain diameter and?
It was,
It's in there.
yeah, it's in there.
Yep.
We're
And then
working
you'll have
on
a
it.
chance.
Okay,
you'll have a
all
chance
right,
to
that's
talk
what I
about
was,
that, too.
okay.
Yeah, it definitely came up, so, yep.
Just something.
This is not related to ordinances, but when I was reviewing the meeting last month, I appreciated that the minutes reflected my comment that I made about how it, you know, I feel, being somebody who purchased a home in the wetlands and not really knowing what that meant until I actually wanted to start to do things. Is that something that this board could engage in some way? Like, is there a form we can create that goes to realtors or something, just so that there's a heads up, so we don't keep having these things happen where people move in and then they get frustrated and upset once they learn the city ordinances about the limits around their property and what they can do to it?
Yeah, I don't know how we'd approach it, but certainly it's something that we could consider and figure out how to do it. I guess it's just a matter of logistics and who's gonna do it and how they're gonna get it to that property owner. And, you know, there's not really like a welcome package that new property owners get from the city, that I know of. But it is something the commission could embark upon, and just, I think maybe an easier way is just to revisit the mailings we have sent in the past, and it's been quite a while now, to property owners that are adjacent to the wetland and wetland buffer, so that they're aware of that. But that's not gonna catch every new property owner, so
Right.
I'd have to think about that, maybe talk with, I guess realtors, I guess, would be the ones who are the first line, and then.
Yeah, they should
assessing department
familiarize
could-
themselves with where the wetlands are in the city of Portsmouth, and the maps are readily available, so.
And I remember even like, you know, there's the one on Walker Bungalow that has the big pond sitting next to it. That house went on the market, and I specifically asked the realtor, like, do you know how much of this house sits in the wetland buffer? And she just, that wasn't even on her radar, which it's sitting next to a very active.
Well, and hopefully the wetland boundary markers will help that, so they'll, if they had an application, you know, as we go forward, then there'll be that, at least that, but, yeah.
Right, and I know DES in the past has worked with the Association of Realtors to do just that, especially in certain watersheds, you know, in certain towns and things like that, because it's not just us that deal with
Right,
that, too.
yeah.
So, I mean, I would think that would be like a
way to do it, too.
contact, yeah, association.
Yeah, I'd be interested in working on something like that, some sort of like a little education program for realtors.
Yeah, just,
I mean, each town is different too, so
right.
it'd be nice to sort of, I don't know, think about how we could be helpful in navigating all of that. I know the town of Hampton does a direct mailing to all new property owners that, you know, have any contact with the buffer.
Yeah, but the thing is that
if somebody-
that's after the fact. They've
Yeah,
bought.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, you go
They
to
don't
these
want
open
the
houses and they
hassles
know
or
nothing.
whatever. He needs it.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get to the realtor.
Huge amount of work
Would do
too.
it, but that's not always the case.
Just go on Zillow and see which ones are coming up, and then just go to their open house and be like, hey,
Yeah.
do you know?
The realtors don't necessarily want people to know.
They don't.
I know, they
Yeah.
don't.
They should.
Well,
Should,
I don't know.
the
I think
value
that's part
goes
of their
down.
job. I think I guess it depends on the realtor, but.
Yeah,
I
like
would
the
think-
buyer versus the seller too. Like I think you,
I think it's a
they want to be
wetland.
good
I
advocates
mean,
for
I
their
think it's an
buyer.
asset having
Yeah.
wetlands on my property,
I do too,
but.
Wow.
I know our realtor said, yeah, you don't have to worry about it.
You're looking for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So much.